This episode is sponsored by Jacobson Real Estate Company. Are you ready to find your dream home? Or maybe you're thinking about selling and want the best deal possible? Well, look no further. At Jacobson Real Estate Company, we make buying or selling your home smooth, stress-free, and exciting. With 50 plus years of experience and a deep knowledge of the Winona, Minnesota area market, we specialize in turning your real estate goals into reality. Whether it's finding that perfect neighborhood, negotiating top dollar for your property, or answering all of your questions along the way, we're here for you. Plus, with our personalized approach, you're not just a client, you're family. So why wait? Let Jacobson Real Estate Company open the door to your future. Call us today at 507-313-2716 or visit our website at jacobsonrealestatecompany.com. Because your next chapter starts here. Buy, sell, invest. Jacobson Real Estate Company. Welcome to this week's edition of Brews and Cruise. I am your host, Chris Jacobson, and I have a familiar face back with me again. Tim Vodak's here to talk about something he kind of touched on the last time he was here, but he's going to go into depth on this, and that's what's called NAMI. And before you ask yourself, what the heck is that? Tim brought us some more drinks from Drink Wisconsinbly that he's going to share with us, and he's going to discuss and tell you what NAMI is in full detail. So, Tim, welcome back.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. And what'd you bring us today?
So this is a newer drink. Well, it's not super new, but this is the Drink Wisconsinbly canned vodka cocktail. So there's 3 different choices. We have a cherry lime, a cran apple, and then this is the orange. So
this looks pretty refreshing because I love orange.
I picked the one that would be the most refreshing because it is really hot and humid today. So
all of a sudden it got hot real quick.
So cheers.
Ooh, that is refreshing. Cheers, Tim.
Cheers, man. Good stuff.
You know, last time we had Drink Wisconsinbly on, they liked my stuff.
Indeed, they did.
So that was kind of nice, and they actually posted a snippet of our conversation on. So that was kind of neat because they got a ton of followers, as noticed.
Yeah, they definitely do. So
this is just an orange vodka. It almost tastes kind of like a seltzer, but a little bit. I think it's got a little bit more flavor than a seltzer. So
the cool thing about the Drink Wisconsinbly vodka cocktails is they're all natural ingredients, so there's no like artificial stuff in there.
Okay.
Like some of the seltzers can kind of hit you with that artificial taste.
Oh, sure.
This is more, there's actual orange juice in there. The cherry lime, there's cherry juice, lime juice. The cran apple is a bit tart for my taste, but if you like cranberry juice, you'll love it. Really good.
Yes, it's gluten-free, made with real fruit juice, and it's coming in at 5% alcohol. So where can you get these? Just in Winona somewhere or pretty much any liquor store around our area?
Yeah, they sell them at Highway 61, at Midtown, at 5th Street Liquor. Some of our products are at Hy-Vee. I'll actually doing some brand ambassador work for them this weekend.
Ooh, where are you going this weekend?
So Friday evening, I'm at Highway 61 from like 5 to 7 doing some tastings. And then Saturday, I'm at Midtown from like 3 to 5 doing tastings. So
okay,
they're trying to really get... So obviously, like the last time I was on here, I talked about my brand ambassador work with them. Since then, we're trying to get more of a footprint in Minnesota. So Drink Wisconsinbly is actually one of the sponsors for Big Muddy Brewing Q this fall.
Oh, really?
In September, the Chambers event. Yeah, so they're the Bloody Mary sponsor. So they'll have all their vodka for the Bloody Marys in September. So.
Well, if people haven't had it, they can come down to Big Muddy Brewing Q and check them out for sure.
I'll be there probably the whole weekend for Big Muddy, Friday and Saturday, doing like tastings and stuff and handing out swag and selling stuff. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, Tim, you're back again, and you're back with a more of a purpose this time. You wanted to talk about a group called NAMI, and I want you to tell me what that acronym stands for, because it's NAMI, right?
Correct. So NAMI is National Alliance of Mental Illness. So it's a grassroots organization, a nationwide grassroots organization. It's kind of a 3-tiered structure. So there's the national NAMI, there's a state NAMI in Minnesota, and then there's different affiliates that are local. So there is a southeast Minnesota NAMI that is based out of Rochester that kind of covers all the counties around. And then Winona as well has a local affiliate just kind of covers Winona County.
Is there a website then for that?
Yep, it's just NAMI.org.
Okay, cool. I'll plug that in the show notes for everyone, for people to check it out. Okay, so now, how did you get involved with this? Where does this all stem from?
So really it starts with, previously, like my family and I, we ran Culver's here in Winona for a number of years. And then we did a couple mental health fundraisers at Culver's in honor of my cousin. My cousin took his own life in 2010. Charlie Vodak, he lived over by Milwaukee in Burlington, Wisconsin. And we always wanted to do something to kind of honor his memory and everything.
Sure.
I have a couple friends from high school as well that took their own life. Jen Waggle, she took her own life when I was a senior in high school. Ben Cullen, he took his own life after we graduated, but I always wanted to do something so you don't have to deal with that or see that happen as much. So we did some fundraiser at Culver's, and then when we sold that in 2021, we're like, okay, what do we do? My mom and I wanted to be involved still, so we kind of reached out to Hiawatha. We reached out to all these organizations, and they're like, why don't you get involved with the local NAMI chapter? And to be honest, I didn't know there was one. It just was nothing that we had connected. I think I've said before, Winona's big enough that sometimes you're not aware of everything that exists, but it's small enough that you know a lot of people. So that was one of those that just was under the radar. So we connected with NAMI here in town, and it just was a perfect match. The lady who was running it, Helen Newell, she was getting older. Health wasn't that great, and she's like, hey, do you guys just want to take this over from me? And my mom stepped up to the plate. She became president, and I just try to help out as much as I can with everything we're going to talk about today. So what kind of inspired you to do this is you knew people that were dealing with mental health issues, and you kind of said, hey, I would like, we did this with Culver's. Now I would like to help out in some other aspect of something. And this is just something that caught your eye or caught your attention that needs to be dealt with. And, the one other thing, I had a guy on last, I think it was June, and he talked about his struggle with some mental health issues. And I couldn't believe he wanted to come on and just talk about it. This is when I was first starting doing the podcast. I remember watching that,
Yeah, that was with Joe Montgomery. And
Yep.
he was free to share all about it. And he said it just brings awareness. Because if I remember right, isn't it June that's Men's Mental Health Awareness? Or
There's a lot of different months that kind of coincide with things.
Sure.
I think you're correct with that. May is just Mental Health Awareness Month.
Okay.
September is Suicide Awareness Month. I think this week especially is, I can't remember the exact name, but it's Mental Health Awareness just week. And it's a nationwide thing. So
Sure. So you've actually had some of these issues hit home for you.
Oh, 100%. That's kind of what the other part why I'm involved is I suffer from depression and generalized anxiety. I'm medicated. I talk to therapists occasionally. I'm not currently talking to a therapist, but for a while there I was pretty regularly, and part of the reason I do it helps me with my coping mechanisms, and it helps me deal with it, is trying to spread the message and the stigma around mental health. And it's I don't know, it kind of fills my cup type of thing.
What do you think the stigma is around mental health? Do you think I'm just going to say this, do you think people think of it as this way? Just get over it. Is that what the stigma might be around it?
I mean, there's lots of different things that kind of, I guess, qualify as a stigma, but yeah, that's definitely it. I think you can talk about, and I've touched base with other, people I've talked to in Winona, is, it's kind of a taboo subject to talk about it if you're a man, especially. You're supposed to be strong. You're not supposed to, it's a sign of weakness to talk about your emotions. And it's the complete opposite. It's a strength to talk about it. You need to talk about it more. I don't know if you knew him, but I brought it up when it happened, because it was, the timing of it was so poignant. It was when the fire chief in Goodview took his own life. Yeah,
that wasn't too long ago.
And from people I had talked to, is he grew up in a household where it was the men weren't supposed to talk about their emotions, and you can only imagine what somebody that dealt with fires and EMT type stuff, what they saw, and just to bury that all, you have to talk about it, otherwise it's just going to eat at you. And tragically, I mean, it ended in a tragic way for him, and that's what we have to do. We just have to talk about it and be more open. And as a father, as a husband,
Yes.
or whatever. You just have to be open and talk about it. As a teacher, like you personally too, I'm sure you take a lot of different things, that emotions outside, and it's just important to talk about.
Well, and someone, as a fire chief, that's a very masculine job. So if he were out there talking about it in the open, some people may get a negative vibe, like, wow, like, how can he have those problems? Look at that masculine job he's doing. So I totally get that stigma that it could possibly be. So now, what are is there any other misconceptions you think that people have other than the one I just brought up? Is there, even for women and even for possibly children and stuff, is there other misconceptions other than you're a guy, you got to bury your feelings and just move on with it?
Good question. I think it's just something that needs to be just discussed. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a kid, a woman, a man, whatever. It just needs to be talked about, and I think as a community, it just needs to be talked about more, because it's going to have that trickle-down effect as well. And you mentioned the youth. I think, statistics you kind of throw out there is ages 8 through 15 is typically when some sort of mental health issue starts to show. So, I mean, that's elementary school, middle school kids. And if you're a parent or a teacher and you don't recognize that, sometimes that could be really harmful, or if you don't know how to deal with it appropriately. And I think that's super key is, to educate your kids how to cope with it, or to just be open. Because, I mean, if you're an 8-year-old kid and you're feeling this way in your brain and you can't really describe it, even as an adult, sometimes it's hard to describe how you're feeling up here. But it's just key just to be open and honest and, and talk about your emotions in any capacity, whatever you're feeling. I think there's a big thing right now with, it's been ongoing with social media, and there's so much negativity on there that if you're a kid and you don't quite understand it, it could lead to a lot of different depressive episodes, anxiety episodes, that kind of thing. So as a parent, talk to your kids regularly. If I ask my kid, he's 4, and I'll be like, how was school today? Or how was daycare? Fine. But it's you got to dig a little bit more to get, some kids to open up and talk about those sort of things. So yeah, just talk.
That's
really.
right.
It's simple stuff.
Well, when you say that, it's hard for an adult to even sometimes describe how they're feeling or what's going through them. Can only imagine how confusing an 8-year-old in 2nd or 3rd grade would be feeling too. So I totally get that. So now, how do you think people could get more educated about the whole mental health awareness thing? I mean, I'm talking about just in a general sense. Is there a better way that the public could be educated on this, as in a mass? Because obviously when you break it down, there might be this person's going through this issue, this person's going through that issue, but as in a general, is there a better way that people could be educated about that? Community events, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, NAMI in general, we do a lot of advocacy, a lot of educational pieces. It's one nice thing that NAMI, being a grassroots organization, a lot of it is free to do. So you can even go right on the website and do some free educational classes, some free articles that you can read just to kind of understand it. Locally here, we even do about once or twice a year, we do some educational pieces that is called family to family education. So if you have a family member, a sibling, a parent, whatever, that's going through a mental health issue, and you're I don't know what to do, we teach you about it, and it's free to learn about it. And that's just one piece of it, just be better educated, be better informed, just be more aware of what to look out for, some of the warning signs. And then obviously there's ways, we can educate ourselves a little more expensive wise. It's kind of cool. I just finished the program this year, or a couple weeks ago, but it's Winona State offers a mental health in organizations and education program, graduate certificate program. I just finished it, and it's nothing fancy that's going to get me a higher paying job or anything like that. But what it is just to be a better person, really, and be able to recognize the warning signs, to help people that are going through crisis. And you don't have to be a mental health professional or a health professional to take this program. I took it as I work in a manufacturing setting, and I was the only one outside of a healthcare or education field that took the program this year. But you could take one class, you can take all 12 credits, it was kind of cool. They taught 2 classes that were mental health first aid. So you think of somebody who's CPR certified, first aid certified, whatever. It's the same thing. It's there's mental health first aid for adults and mental health first aid for youth. So that way you can realize the warning signs. You know how somebody's having an anxiety attack and how to deal with it. You know what not to say, like you mentioned, like, oh, you'll get over it. Like, you know, some of that stuff can be kind of, you know, demoralizing to somebody that's going through something.
Sure.
And the same piece too is you kind of learn the right language, like to the point where like I hear somebody say, oh, the weather in Minnesota is so bipolar. And I'm like, whoa, let's use some different language. I know Minnesota weather is changing all the time, but let's use better language, because bipolar can be really stigmatizing towards somebody who actually suffers from bipolar disorder.
That you know, I probably am guilty of saying that too.
We all are.
For sure. Now, I like that you said you're not just talking about people with mental illnesses. You were talking about how people who aren't suffering from that can see warning signs. What are some of the warning signs that people would see if someone were having a mental issue? Because you just took the class, right? You said,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So let's use. So the other reason too why I'm kind of involved with this, I have an aunt who suffers from schizophrenia, and some of the warning signs there, if somebody is going through a psychosis, is, you know, they might be hearing voices, they might be seeing things that aren't real, they might just be believing things that aren't true. As a kid, I remember my aunt coming to our door or going to her house, and she was saying the bats were talking to her. The bats were flying around and had like radar and sonar and all this stuff.
Oh wow.
And yeah, like that'd be a warning sign there. Obviously, with people with like bipolar disorder, it's those really drastic mood changes, or somebody with anxiety like me. When I have an anxiety attack, it's really telling. I stutter. I never stutter normally.
Okay.
My heart races. I get a stomach ache and a headache, so that's all internal. But like if I was having one, you could tell my hand flutters. Like I might have my hands at my side and they flutter.
Sure.
The stuttering is definitely noticeable. And yeah, like my mom and my wife can notice it right away.
Sure. So those would be warning signs for possibly you, or is that for kind of more of a general, if someone's having an anxiety
Yeah, those
attack?
anxiety attacks, for the most part, that's pretty common. Yeah.
So that's one thing that's one thing that's hard for me to grasp, is an anxiety attack. Because, you know, I've known you for a few years. I see you out in public. You're doing a lot of things, and I feel like that would create anxiety for a lot of people. But I feel like when you're out in public talking to people, you're almost in your element. Now, I don't know if that was something you just kind of got over, because I assume like you're okay with being in front of people and talking to them. Right now you are, but right now it's just you and me here.
True.
So that could be different. But you know, obviously you're involved with a lot of different organizations. You're out promoting even for Drink Wisconsinbly. So you're out in front of people, and for a lot of people that might create anxiety for them, and for you, I don't know if it does, but is that something you had to get over?
Yeah, definitely. It's something I have to get over. There's still times where in certain situations I still get pretty anxious before I go to them.
Oh, really?
Like,
see, that would surprise me.
If I'm on, say, like my job is recruiting, so I'm going to job fairs. Mm-hmm. So if I'm on this side of the table, you know, and like there's people walking around, I'm fine. A lot of times, like, for example, I don't know if you ever go to like the chamber network nights. Sometimes. Once in a while, I have some anxiety going to those, because I'm just like, okay, how's this going to go? There's a lot of people. Sometimes small talk is hard. Some of those I struggle with, or other events that are just really crowded. Like, you know, you go to a football game or a concert, and depending on the situation, if I'm used to it and comfortable with it, like we go to enough Packer games, I've gotten comfortable with like the layout and how people behave and stuff like that. But like concerts, like we went to Taylor Swift 2 years ago up in the cities, and like that was pretty anxious because it was unknown. I didn't know how things were going to go.
So is it more of the unknown is what gets you going then with the anxiety? I haven't been to something like this before. I don't know the situation. That's what makes it. Because you're just saying, like, you go to a Packer game, that's crowded, it's a lot of people, but you've been there before. So
yeah.
Is that what gets you going?
I think so.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard, like I said before, like the stuff that goes on inside your brain, like it's just hard to it's hard to explain sometimes. And I mean, just the unknown in general, like the unknown is scary as hell. Like,
sure,
you know, not knowing what's going to happen 5 minutes from now, tomorrow, next week, when you're in the hospital, like, that's not to scare you, but that stuff's scary. Like, and you just kind of find the comfort in what you can control. I think the biggest thing, and like I knew this and like I learned it again in my class, is like control the controllables. Like you can control how you feel about a situation, but you can't control how other people feel or act,
Right.
And that's, like say you're at a Packer game and some drunk idiot behind you spills your beer on you. You can control how you react, but you can't control how he reacts,
Right. Yeah. I've seen quotes like that before. It's like you can control yourself on how you react to certain things. And now you were saying, you were talking about, the anxiety. And I was going to ask you as you were talking, but I didn't want to interrupt. What have you found that allows you to basically calm yourself down? What do you do specifically for yourself that says, okay, I can tell it's coming on? And then how do you soothe it, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. It's hard sometimes, depending on the severity of it. Sometimes, honestly, I just have to ride it out. And I know, like, it's going to go away usually in, like, an hour, 2 hours maybe. But sometimes I just kind of, like, ride out the wave. Other times, if it's mild, you can kind of use your senses and, like, or your breathing. Your breathing is so important just for any sort of mental health issue. Like, my therapist I used to go to, she'd always say, put one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach and kind of do 5 big breaths. I've taught my son to do and it works really good, actually. So keep that in mind when your kid gets older.
All right.
But you smell the flowers. So you go, and then you blow out the candles, and then you do that 5 times, and it actually does work. But yeah, it's just to regulate your breathing, because you think of if you're in like a fight or flight mode and your heart rate tends to go higher, your breathing gets irregular. And when you do those breathing exercises, it helps regulate your nervous system. It doesn't always work for me, but sometimes it does. Or like sometimes, honestly, like if you just focus on your senses, it can kind of help, level you out. A lot of times I'll just go outside and like smell, and say it's a fall day, you can smell like the crisp of the air, the leaves, or if it's like today, you smell like the grass and the plants and everything like that. Sometimes that helps too. Or
sure,
if you feel something like this table, it's smooth, and you just kind of describe it to yourself, and that kind of helps center yourself too. So
okay. Now I got something. This might be no, that's not a good idea. Some people say, you know what, I just have to have a drink to take the edge off. Probably not the best way to go about that, I would assume. I mean,
it depends on the person. I mean, if that works for you, I guess that works for you. Obviously, we all know alcohol is a depressant usually, so not always the best. And obviously, some people are like, all right, I got to smoke a bowl or something like that. You know, like some people that works for them. And if that works for you, I guess so be it. But obviously, it's not the best method. It's not,
especially if you're an alcoholic. Don't do that.
Exactly.
So what are some of the support groups and programs that NAMI offers here in Winona? I don't know if you touched on it or not, because you gave me a ton of information at the beginning of this. But what are some of the support groups that are within Winona that programs maybe they do?
Yeah, I touched base on the educational pieces a little bit already, but the support groups are kind of where our bread and butter is. So they're peer-led support groups. So it's key to always remember, like, the people who are leading these groups aren't like licensed therapists or anything like that. Everybody who's involved is like lived experience leaders, like myself, somebody who's dealt with depression and anxiety. Or we have somebody who leads one of our groups that suffers from bipolar, or, she struggles with that. So we do a couple different support groups. Every Monday night, we do a connection support group that's down at the VFW right now from 7 to 8:30 on Mondays. And it's basically anybody that lives with a mental illness can come and talk. And
they don't have to sign up. They can just walk in.
It's just free to walk in.
Okay.
It's a confidential environment. You can talk about whatever. And usually they try to touch base on, they'll lead it and touch base on like topics, not so much like come in and just tell us how your week was, but like, hey, let's talk about this. And it's super beneficial. The one girl who leads the group, actually, she was on the other side as a patient, basically. Like I said, she suffers from bipolar, and now she leads the group. Like in 2 years, she's like completely like changed her life over through NAMI and through some other entities that she works with. But it's a cool success story for her. So that's the Connections group on Monday nights. And then on the second Wednesday of every month, so the night we're recording tonight, there's a family support group at the VFW. We only do that once a month, but that's also at the VFW from 7 to 8:30. And that's a family support group. So say, you have a parent, a sibling, a husband, wife, whatever, that's suffering from mental illness. And usually when that's the case, you feel very alone and you're like, okay, what the hell do I do? Who do I talk to? Where do I turn? It's a nice group you can go to and talk about this, whatever issue is, and get support, get help, get resources, sometimes just get pointed in the right direction. It's kind of cool. The last couple groups that I went to, we had a family that, their son was obviously schizophrenic. They talked about it kind of like what I was telling you about my aunt, the things, the warning signs she had. And they're talking about it and describing his behavior. And I'm like, ding, 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 sounds just like my aunt. And we brought it up to them and they're like, okay, what do we do? And, we offered them support and everything and tried to give them some resources. I mean, you can only give so much out. And hopefully, their son gets the help he needs. But it's kind of cool when you talk to these people and you realize like, hey, this is the same situation, I'm going through. Or, a girl came and her mom, can't remember, it was just what her disorder is, but some sort of psychotic disorder. And it was the same thing. Like she described it and she got the help she needed. And then she actually went to some of those educational classes just to learn more. And I think from last I heard, her mom's a lot better. So, I mean, over at it helped her. It was beneficial. So
that sounds like the group, where Alcoholics Anonymous, they have that. But then I think it's the other one. I can't remember what it's considered. It may be Al-Anon or something. Al-Anon, where yep. It's like someone's family member, and how do I deal with my family member who's having this issue? Because you might say, well, who do I talk to? I don't know anybody else. And then you go to a support group, and someone else may have had that same issue, and they're like, no, I can tell you exactly how to deal with this. So that's a really good resource to have around 100%, Winona.
Yeah.
And so that's once a month then. And is it the VFW as well?
Yep.
Is most everything at the VFW?
Right now we use the VFW for all of our support groups. Occasionally, like the educational classes that we do have been out at the middle school. So, if you go to our website, namiwinona.org, it usually has like a calendar of all of our events and stuff. So, and then I should mention too, you mentioned some support groups that we're involved with. The one big thing, and you're aware being in the educational field, is like, how do you help the youth? So one of my goals was to try to get some sort of mental health room in the high school here. So Winona Senior High School to start out. And so right now I'm working with the leadership at the high school to start something that's called Hope Squad. It's something else that already exists, and they're going to bring it into the high school hopefully next year. Basically, it's peer-led support groups that the high school students will support other high school students.
Oh, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, any way you can get the help out there, because obviously anything's better than a suicide issue. That would be great.
Yeah.
So, how long do you know how long NAMI's been around Winona for? Has it been quite a long time?
It's been a decent amount of years. I think at least 30 years. NAMI, in general, has been around since the mid-'70s.
Okay.
I think NAMI Winona's been around for about 30 years.
Okay. That was one thing I've never heard of it until you said something to me about it, and you brought it up on the last podcast too. So now here we are dealing with it, and it's an awesome thing. So what are some advice that you would give to someone that's maybe struggling with mental health out there? Since you obviously firsthand, and you also dealt with it secondhand with family members and friends, what are some of the struggles, and how would you give someone advice if someone came up to you and said, hey, I'm dealing with such and such issue, and you would say back to them?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I guess I'll touch base on first is the roadblock, because you can't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped themselves.
Sure.
And that's a struggle, and so you just have to be persistent. Like I brought up my aunt, like for example, for her situation, it was a struggle, and she lives in Wisconsin, or lived in Wisconsin previously, and that was hard to deal with because, we had to commit her and that kind of thing. But in general, I would say, and I guess I should mention, she didn't want the help. She didn't think she had an issue, and that's a whole another warning sign of some of those mental illnesses is they don't think they have what they actually do have, even though they might be diagnosed with it, whatever. But if I'm giving advice, it's just like I mentioned earlier, just be open and talk about it and be vulnerable. I think that's super key is, like it's okay not to be okay, and if you notice somebody is like struggling, like ask them, be like, hey, how are you doing? And if I asked you right now, hey, Chris, how you doing today? What are you going to say?
Right now, a little stressed just because this week is the week before the baby is coming, and it's the end of the school year that I'm teaching, and there's a lot coming up because it just is, and then also real estate, and then obviously the podcast. So a lot on my plate right now, but I also enjoy the lot on my plate at the same time. It's one of those like I love being busy, but I also hate it at the same time because then if I'm not busy, I'm like, I wish I was doing something right now too.
Exactly.
So trying to find that balance of I love being busy, but I also want to relax. And my wife is actually, I've told her this is one thing I always appreciated. She's always helped me just come home, sit down, relax. She was like, let's watch a movie. And I'm the person that's like, how about we watch a 30-minute sitcom? Because movies are good to a certain point if it's something I can sink my teeth into. But if it's not, I'm like, I'm on my phone looking at stuff, So it doesn't always, but she does help me relax on those things. So I do love the chaos, but I also, there's times I'm like, I wish I just had nothing to do today. But then when I'm doing the nothing to do that day, I'm like, I wish I was doing something or I should be doing something.
Come on.
Yeah. So right now, if you had asked me today, which is, what is today? The 14th of May that we're recording this, little stressed just because of the fact I got a bunch of things coming up and the unknown of a child that I've never had a baby before. That's exciting and nervous at the same time.
It's every emotion you can possibly have all rolled into one.
Right, exactly. So when someone does, you said it's sometimes they don't think they have a problem. How do you get past that portion? Because I feel like you're sitting there at like a standstill. Mm-hmm. They say you don't have a problem or they don't have a problem. And you're like, yes, you do. I know you have the problem because I've already dealt with this with someone else before. And then you're kind of just standing there. It's like a standoff. What do you do?
Sure. I'll circle back real quick too. So I asked you how we were doing, and you gave me an answer, which was great, a longer answer. But sometimes you'll ask somebody, like if you ask a colleague at work, like how you doing, and they say, oh, I'm okay.
Yep.
And that's it. Or great.
Sure.
That's sometimes like the sign you got to like dig a little more, be like, okay, but how are you actually, But
see that's like a whole different type of conversation, because if you walk by, say to someone, go, I was going today, and they say good back to you, and you just keep moving away, but you actually sat down and said, well, how are you doing today?
Yeah.
So I think it's more of how you phrased it, actually.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, always kind of try to dig a little bit deeper, especially if you know somebody like pretty well and you kind of know a little bit of their story. So yeah, you asked me, how do you deal with somebody who doesn't think they have a problem? I mean, you just got to be persistent. Is somebody there for support? And then maybe like what we did with my aunt, and what I've done with other people is just like point out the things, that they might be saying, they might be seeing, the way they're acting, that kind of stuff. I wish, like looking back on it now with my aunt, this was in the 90s when she was sick. We didn't have like smartphones or anything like that. Like that's one thing you can do now is like record people. And like, I wish I could go back and record these sessions where my aunt was like acting the way she was and then kind of play it back for her, be like, hey, like this is what you used to be like, but this is how you're now are acting. Like something doesn't seem quite right. What do you think about it? Because you kind of have to make them, come to the conclusion themselves. So you have to like empower people to find the solution. But yeah, it's all about being persistent, and it's just about caring. If you care for somebody, you want them to be healthy. And, if you see somebody that breaks their leg or has cancer, you want them to, get over those issues and go to the doctor and deal with it. And I think it's the same thing we have to look at is, their mental health needs to be taken care of the same as a physical health. So sure.
So now in our community, how can people get involved with NAMI? What is there a sign up, or is it just, it sounds like it's volunteer based.
Yeah.
From what it sounds like from you telling me, but is there somewhere you got to go sign up? Is there like a background check to do anything?
No.
Or no?
I mean, there's a multitude of other organizations too that are involved with, mental health. I know, you can do stuff at Hiawatha and volunteer for different events they have there. Mandy and Bill Hansel have started a lot of stuff with Trinona and all those Storm the Farm, Storm the Hill type runs, and all their funds it goes to youth mental health education. And obviously for us, ours is more widespread, but it's really, just reach out to us. We're always at different events to, just ask us what they can do to help.
Is that what people do? They call like NAMI and ask, "Hey, how can we help with this mental health issue? Is there something we can do?" And then you say, "Yeah, well, raise money or do this." And they say, "Okay, well, we can do this with our group of like running or do a run and raise money." Is that how that kind of goes?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different events that exist too, that are from a financial piece. Like every year, there's usually NAMI walks that they do in for Southeast Minnesota and Rochester, and it's just a walk in memory of somebody who lost to a mental health issue or mental health. I guess the one thing to kind of share is obviously like we've only been involved for a couple of years now, so we're trying to like build up the awareness and just make people more aware. The support groups that we do, the Monday night one, it's big enough that we want to do a few more. The issue is we need more people to lead those support groups. So trying to get one on campus, either at Winona State or at St. Mary's, that's our goal for this fall. And connect, basically like to try to get more volunteers. We just try to have our face on campus multiple times and just talk to different people and just say, hey, like if you want to help us, here's what we need. So.
Okay. Well, yeah. And so you said that you obviously do at the VFW. Is that like the main one then? Mm-hmm. And then you're trying to get it on campuses
Correct.
As well?
Yeah.
You just need some volunteers basically to help out with that process.
We have a couple that we reached out to later in the semester, and then there wasn't any, like, they have to go through training to like be a group facilitator.
Oh, sure.
And there wasn't any training available this spring, so we kind of had to put a pause on it. So
okay. Now, when you first got involved, you said what was it, 2021-ish?
Really, with NAMI, it was 2023. It's only been a couple of years.
Oh, so. Okay. So you're kind of new to this whole situation. What did you find it? Were you a little nervous when you first started getting involved with it, or was it pretty natural? Because you said you've dealt with it, family's dealt with it. Was it kind of easy for you to just step in and start helping out, or were you like, I don't know if this might be out of my comfort zone?
It was a little difficult at first, and then once I started taking these classes at Winona State, it just became more natural. Like a lot of these statistics and topics, I'm talking about with you, I knew about, but I wasn't as well educated and well informed and just like confident about talking about them. Like we did a couple news stories with WKPT, and they came and interviewed me for them, and like I just kind of shot off the hip. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna come today and talk to you." And I'm like, oh, hopefully I didn't sound like an idiot. And and my mom was there watching, and it's my mom. She's going to be nice, but she's like, no, that was great. Like, you know what you're talking about. And yeah, so now I'm not so nervous doing, leading these groups or talking about stuff, related to mental health. It's, as I think I mentioned in the last podcast, like, if you're passionate about something, you can do anything.
It's pretty easy.
You can sell ice to an Eskimo if you're passionate enough about it,
You
can sell sand to somebody who lives in the desert. So
that's true. Yeah. So I mean, I just, sitting here, 2 years you've been into it, I can tell you're very comfortable with it. And you said the classes really kind of helped you out just to learn. You knew it was an issue, but you found out, oh wow, these are the stats behind these issues.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Now, is there something that was difficult that you found when you first got into it? Other than maybe having to talk just randomly right away, was there anything that was tough? Was it, maybe time consuming on you? Because I feel like you're part of a ton of things in this town.
That's definitely 100%. Yeah. Just the time, just like you said, trying to balance all these different things at once. I mean, I have a full-time job, and I'm blessed with my full-time job because they're very flexible, and they say as long as you're doing good in the community and you're representing Benchmark, we're okay with it, and
usually companies want people out there, obviously representing them in a positive light. Mm-hmm. So that would be a positive light for sure. So when you first got into it, you talked about the stigma before about, how this is, men, you bury the hatchet, just figure it out. Mm-hmm. How do you think we can get over that as just humans on not only for men, but for women, for children? How do we let go of that stigma that it makes you feel maybe demoralized, makes you feel less than. How do you think we can get over that hump as just people in general? I mean, there's people like you and there's people like me who we would sit down, and if someone's having a bad day, we would talk to them. But not everyone's going to be like that.
Right.
They may have a different one. Like, I'm just going to go off and say, hey, stop being a pussy, someone might say to you, right? I mean, that's just like something that it would possibly just be said out in the general public. How would we get over someone just trying to be like that or say that kind of things to someone that says, hey, I'm having an issue, I'm having an anxiety attack, or I feel like I'm having a mental breakdown?
Oh, man, it's a good question. It's $1 million question, man.
It is the $1 million question. Probably if we had the answer, we'd make millions off of it.
I think as a community, we just have to be more accepting of people. I mean, as a country too. I mean, that's one. Not to get all political, but I mean, that's one thing that's really prominent right now. Is they want to cut a lot of funding to mental health resources. There's a lot of. I mean, I don't know if it's actually going to go through. Obviously, there's talks about it, but I think that's what we need. There's a big need already locally for. I mean, there's more demand for mental health, therapy, education than there is supply just in Winona. And Winona is a pretty big community, but can you imagine what it's like in these rural areas? That's one big struggle. I think that's one thing we need to do just hopefully as just a state or local, is just make sure we have the funding available for those people that need it for the, just therapy. Maybe it starts with education in the high schools too. I kind of look at it from two ways, because obviously there's these adults and adolescents that need therapy, so we need to be there for them. But we also need to be there at the early stages, like I mentioned, ages 8 through 15. We need to educate these kids so they grow up into adolescence and they're aware how to cope with some of the stuff themselves. So maybe they don't need the therapy. It's kind of a two-prong approach, but yeah. Just what we're doing here. I mean, obviously, that other guy you had on your podcast, he talked about it, and that's what we need to keep doing, is just being open and talking about these things and talking about, our mental health, because it's just going to lessen that stigma. I guess the other piece, too, is, we have to get our leaders, whether it be, our presidents, our governors, whatever, it could be leaders of a company, to talk about their mental health. I look at people who are, leaders, and it's like, okay, if you talked about, some issue you might be dealing with on a more personal level, I'm going to respect you more, and it's going to make me understand the situation better. Like, for example, I just saw it today. Granted, he's not a leader, but I mean, he's somebody he's looked up to, is Kevin Love. He used to play for the Timberwolves. He suffers from mental depression and anxiety, so much that he started a nonprofit under his name. And I think a lot of people can look to that in a positive light, because it's somebody they look up to, it's somebody they can understand, but he's talking about something that you or me or any of us might go through. It just makes it seem more, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it just makes it seem more realistic.
Sure. Yeah. And people, it's always nice when someone comes out that people would look up to it, and they kind of says, well, gosh, that guy seemed like he has this fantastic life, and he was in the NBA or is in the NBA, and like, how could that guy be going through all that issues? But you never know what someone's going through on the surface, Yeah,
exactly. That's why you should ask, like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah,
I'm okay.
Really, how's your day going?
Exactly. Yeah. How are you feeling? Or, what's going on with you? So, yeah.
Yeah, and so now there's another question that I have for you. And what are some of the recent advocacy efforts or initiatives by NAMI that are just within the Winona area?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We're able to go up to the state capitol every year, and there's Mental Health Day on the Hill. It was in late February this year, and we're able to go up and meet with our local legislators and talk to them about mental health issues that are going on in our state. That one thing I mentioned already is rural areas in Minnesota not having access. So you think of somebody that, it exists in Winona a little bit too, but, there's transportation issues. So if you live in rural Minnesota, you don't have a car, there's no bus service, there's no taxi service, and the only way you can get to therapy is you're 2 feet? Like, that's not realistic, if your therapist is 20, 30 minutes away. So having more telehealth availability is one thing that they're trying to push, and we kind of advocated for it. On a local level here too is just, like I mentioned, having the education available in the schools, having enough staff in the schools, so the funding available for public education and private education, just to have social workers or psychologists or what have you in the schools. Like, I mean, I know for you at Hope Lutheran, can't remember how many staff there is in the counseling office, but it's not a lot, right?
Well, I'm at St. Martin's.
St. Martin's,
so I can't speak for them, but we have a counselor that comes in roughly once a week and does.
That's right.
Sometimes she's doing individual counseling sessions and it's only with the 7th and 8th graders.
Sure.
And then she'll come in usually about every other week and does a full class presentation of whatever the topic she's going to go over with.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, we do have that, but it's, there's not like someone they could just walk down to if they're having a bad day, other than to talk to a teacher or maybe even the principal or the secretary. That's about as far as it goes. So we don't have any of that kind of stuff either at our school. And she does come from the public school system. So.
Right. It's kind of shared, right?
Very much so. We basically run on her schedule. So whatever her availability is, that's when we have to just plug it into our system.
Right. And we talked about, like, Winona, I feel like it's big enough and it should have these resources, but, because of funding, or is it staffing, or multitude of things, like, it doesn't exist. So that's one thing we're trying to advocate for, is just, more funds available to pay these people so we can attract staff to help these kids, so it can tackle it right away when they might be going through an issue when they're 10, 11, 12,
if I was a younger kid, I think my whole issue, would be to open up to a counselor would be, they might tell my parents, because obviously if it's something pretty serious, they're probably going to tell their parents, hey, this is what's going through little Johnny's head. You may want to look into that, and that might be maybe embarrassing for the kid. I feel like that would be a tough thing for me as a child if I was having that issue. And I don't know if there's any sort of advice you could give on that topic at all, because it's one of those things that they are dealing with something that could possibly lead to a suicide or hurting them or harming themselves. They would need to share that with the parents, because when you're 18 and older, then it kind of just goes, now you're on your own. It's all confidential, but
right.
As like a 12-year-old little Johnny says this, and all of a sudden the counselor's like, well, I better tell mom or dad that.
Right.
I don't know if there's any way that you could ease a kid's mind to open up more, to make sure I feel like the kids that I've had growing up, they have no problem telling me their feelings. But if I were growing up, I think I would have a problem as a person. I'd just be like, oh man, I don't want to be embarrassed,
Exactly. I think I applaud you for being a teacher like that kids are comfortable talking to, because I'm sure there's some teachers out there that are, like, very closed off and they don't want to hear about a kid's problem. So I applaud you for that, because, yeah, it's not easy to, like, absorb all that and, deal with that. So, I mean, as somebody coming from the educational field too, I'll share with you, I've heard, and I'm sure you're aware of it with social media and Snapchat and all that stuff, like the bullying that exists and how that can lead to, kids' poor mental health.
Blackmail, probably even.
I'll share with you this, and it just blows my mind that it exists. But one of my friends was telling me they had a kid in their kids' school that was getting bullied. There was girls in the school, I think they're like 12, and they were creating like fake Snapchat videos of her in the nude and like passing around school. And the girl was like, she's 12 or 13, and she just would go home. She went home and she told her parents like it was going on, and she was like, thinking about taking her own life, and they got her into counseling and everything.
Sure.
But I'm like, I can't imagine even thinking of that when I was that age, and it's like, what does it come back to? Is it bad parenting? Is it bad whatever? I mean, it's a multitude of things. It's not just one thing that caused it, but it's just, wow. When they told me this, I was like, I can't even believe that exists. But kids are creative in good ways and really, really bad ways. So
I always tell my students during health class, I go, for you guys, it's a little harder because there is social media, whether it's a good or a bad thing. Some people use it to the bad. But I go, when we were younger, the bullying stopped when you went home.
Yep,
And
exactly.
it would continue back. You couldn't get cyberbullied and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, well, I understand you guys have it harder these days, I would say, in that aspect. But, sometimes we duked it out with fist fights and then
Say, I'll meet you out by the flagpole, and it ended there.
that's where she ended.
Unless they chased you home on your bike or something.
Because the stuff that sits in the social media world can sit out there forever.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really go away.
No.
The bruise on your face, if you punch someone or they punched you, that goes away. Maybe you have some hurt feelings, maybe you get in trouble a little bit, but then all of a sudden it's done. I mean, what you just told me, that's crazy, but I can also see how easy it is to do that.
Yeah.
You can put someone's head on a fake body for sure. They're all out there. Celebrity ones have been out there for years.
It's AI, man.
That's just nuts. Well, as we're starting to wind down here, I want you to discuss some upcoming events, because I understand that there's some coming events in the next week or two that are hosted by NAMI Winona. What are some of them and when are they?
I got a little poster here.
Oh, perfect.
I'll leave with you. But so like I mentioned, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we wanted to do some events to reach the community and to raise funds. Like I said, we're all volunteer led. So any money we get is just donations, basically, and grants. But next Wednesday, May 21st, from 5 to 8 at Pizza Ranch here in town. Pizza Ranch was nice enough to donate 10% of their proceeds from 5 to 8 back to NAMI. We'll have a resource table available, information available, and then some of us will be there bussing tables and talking to people. And then Thursday, the 22nd, Nate and Allie's is doing a 10% evening for us from 5 to 7. And then right after that, down at Two Fathoms Brewery, where I better see you there, there's trivia that I'm hosting. The owners down there at Two Fathoms are kind enough to donate 10% of the proceeds of the night back to NAMI, and then we'll have some resources and information available, but some good trivia, so I expect to see you there. Friday, the 23rd, Acoustic Cafe was awesome, and they're donating 10% of their proceeds the whole day that they're open back to us. And then there'll be obviously resources and information available as well, and people to talk to. And then our big event is next Saturday the 24th at the Eagles Club. We're doing a lunch from 11 to 2. We're calling it Blue Roof Throwbacks and luncheon. So like I mentioned, and like we used to own Culver's, so we're doing some like old Culver's food that we used to have that they discontinued over the years.
Oh, cool.
So a couple different sandwiches. Culver's was kind enough to donate soup actually for it. So we're doing, excuse me, a couple, I think we have 5 different sandwiches. So if you're a fan of the turkey BLT, we're doing that, or barbecue beef or a barbecue pork, and then chicken noodle soup, chili, or broccoli cheese. And then we'll get a salad. It's $15 a person. You pay at the door, and the food will be available till we run out. We didn't like sell tickets or anything like that. We'll just serve food till we run out. So that's down at the Eagles Club. So should be fun. My mom and I are going to be cooking the food in the kitchen. Should be a blast. And then over the course of like that week and a little bit later, we'll have a store open, a fundraising store. You can buy like NAMI merch, like shirts, sweatshirts, hats. I don't have the link for that yet, but I'll send it over to you once I get it.
Sure.
But Corey Tomish is doing that. So, it'll be a fun little way you can get some NAMI merch and get some proceeds back to us. So
Sure. Now, as I'm about to be a parent here, what would be your one good piece of advice for a parent dealing with a child that's maybe it's dealing with a mental illness?
Ooh,
I stumped him.
Well, I thought you were going to ask me a different question, so I was like, oh, well, I'll answer the question I thought you were going to ask me first, and then I'll answer your question. So as a parent, okay, of a newborn, you're not getting sleep. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with somebody that you can't communicate to. That baby's not going to be like, Daddy, feed me. Daddy, change my diaper.
Okay.
You're going to, at some point in time, that kid's going to be crying. You're going to be like, what the hell do you want? And your blood pressure is going to spike, and you're going to feel that like anxious part, And it's good as a parent to remember, like, take a step back, breathe, and just walk away for a minute sometimes. I was guilty of that as a first-time dad, too. I mean, sometimes I'd be like, what do you want, kid? Like, because they'd be crying, whatever. And, I just knew, like, okay, they're a baby. They can't express how they feel. I need to take a step back, just to collect my emotions. So that's one thing. But as a parent of a kid, so say, your daughter's 8 or 9 and, you know, she might be going through something or in high school, you know, ask those questions and get her to express it. You know, like you always see those dinner table like things or dinner table conversations in like TV or movies, and they'll sit around the dinner table. How was school today? It was good or fine, you know, and kind of like you got to dig a little bit more with those kids to get them to open up, or maybe just provide education to them. That's one good thing that NAMI does, and I've been doing, is going into the schools to provide education to these kids. And just talk to them about, you know, how to deal with situations that may exist. Like if your kid goes to school and they get bullied, like I mentioned, like, and they come home and tell you, like, obviously deal with it seriously, like, you know, and say, hey, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. You know, let's talk about it, you know, and, you know, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be sad. I think that's one thing too, especially you're going to be raising a girl that's going to be a teenager at one time, and their emotions are going to go whoosh, all over the place, you know?
Sure.
And, you know, talk to them about, you know, it's okay to feel all these emotions you're feeling. Just don't let those emotions like over encompass, you know, other parts of you. Right. You know, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to be mad, etc. So yeah, and it's okay to not be okay sometimes. So,
well, that's great advice. And before we go, I got to ask you one more question. Last question. If you guys are watching, Tim is wearing a Abuses shirt. I don't know if there's a reason for this or it's just a fun shirt you wanted to wear. I had to ask you about it because at first I just thought it was a Hawaiian shirt, but as I'm sitting here talking, you go, wait, that's Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
As everyone else goes, Abuses.
I've never heard that.
It's on TikTok.
Okay.
Oh, got to go to Boosie's. Got to go to Boosie's. Got to stop at Boosie's. I don't know if there's a reason why you were wearing that or not.
Well, I wear these a lot. You would think I've been to one. I've never been to a Buc-ee's. Never. Once. It's on my bucket list. So my sister, she goes to what town? Like Eastern Tennessee. Why can't I think of the town?
Knoxville.
Knoxville.
Perfect.
Or Hendersonville or something over there by Pigeon Forge and everything. She goes there about once a year, and she started going there, and she knows I like wearing ugly shirts, and so she brought me back one. Well, then one of my coworkers at Benchmark, Becky, she goes to Texas pretty regularly, and every time she goes to Texas, she brings me back a shirt, socks. I think I have these shirts. I have 5 of them. Every time I wear one, Molly's like, please do not wear that to work. How do people take you seriously with that? I don't know if it's my style, but I have socks. Winston has a matching shirt like this as well. I have socks. I have an apron that Becky got me.
And they're all
Buc-ee's. And I have a Buc-ee's. The best one is, I'll have to show you the picture later. I have a Buc-ee's onesie, a Christmas elf onesie. So it looks like the Buc-ee's mascot with an elf costume on, and it's a onesie. Thing is epic, and yeah, I got that last year for Christmas. So,
and I've
never been to one, but it's on my bucket list. We went to Colorado last year, and there's one in Denver, and we were really close to it, but we didn't have time when we could go to it, so I was sad. So it's on the bucket list.
Well, that's great. I just thought it was such a fun-looking shirt, and so I had to ask you about it.
Thank you.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add to the podcast
I will show you these signs.
Yeah.
So this is one thing we did on our news story with WKBT. We put up these signs around town.
Okay.
And we'll have more of these available at some of our events to hand out. There were one thing I worked with Parks and Rec Department to get up in a lot of the parks in town. So there's some up on Sugarloaf. There's some up in Garvin Heights. I think there's some down on the levee. But there was enough draw that people wanted them in the community. So Terry Klinecki and Winona Sign and Design, she's like, I'll just print these signs up for you and give them to you for a good cost, and you can sell them for a fundraiser for NAMI. It's been great. But yeah, I have like 50 more of them we're going to be selling at all of our fundraisers next week. So
for those who are listening, what does the sign say if they're not watching?
So it says, you are not alone, you are needed, and the world needs you here. Call or text 988 for help. Wasn't my direct idea. I worked with an organization in La Crosse, La Crosse Area Suicide Prevention Initiative that did signs down there, and they even have signs on the Cass Street Bridge.
Sure.
So I'm trying to work with Minnesota DOT to get some signs on the bridge here in Winona too. So fingers crossed. Working with the state's a little slow. So Ripper, if you're watching, help me out, man. Let's get these on the bridge.
Well, I want to thank you, Tim, for coming on in and shedding some light on a serious topic that maybe not everyone thinks is as serious, but it is. And if there is someone dealing with it, they can reach out to maybe you specifically, or at least get part of NAMI. And if someone else is dealing with it with a family member, they know where to reach out to. So I want to thank you for coming on in and shedding some light on this.
Yeah.
And also bringing some amazing more Drink Wisconsinbly Vodka Cocktail Oranges. I think this is a fantastic one for the river.
Right? Definitely.
So,
cheers.
Yeah, cheers. For those who are listening, if you can't see behind me, or if you're just listening, please like, share, subscribe, and 5-star this podcast. Leave us a comment. It does help the algorithm shoot this maybe out to people who have never heard of the Brews and Cruise podcast. But this has been another episode, and I'm going to thank Tim one more time for bringing in some delicious drinks, talking about NAMI, and we will see you next week. Cheers.